Good evening. Thanks for joining us. And for everyone worried about their 401ks, perhaps the best that could be said about today was that Wall Street was only a multi-trillion dollar roller coaster and not something worse. Unlike Asia, where markets fell as much as 13% today, in Europe, which had heavy losses too, stocks here held on only just. The Dow losing about 1%, the Nasdaq closing slightly up, the S&P slightly down. It was anything but smooth, however, with investors following every bit of tariff news from the White House and one rumor which seemingly hinged on a single word from a single White House official.
Will you do a 90-day pause, and would you consider that?
Or Bill, yeah, I think that the president is going to decide what the president's going to decide. There are more than 50 countries in negotiation with the president.
Well, Kevin Hassett said that on Fox at about 8:25 this morning. His little yep or yeah, depending on how you heard it, was apparently enough for a social media user who goes by the name Walter Bloomberg, in relation to the billionaire or the business news outlet, just someone who amplifies a lot of Bloomberg content. Walter Bloomberg's posting about it, which has since been deleted, went up at 10:13, complete with siren emoji. By 10:15, a CNBC anchor was saying this on air.
I think we do have some headlines.
I think we can go with this headline. Apparently, Hassett's been saying that Trump will consider a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except for China.
Well, a couple of minutes later, the Dow Industrials had shot up 1,000 points, only to collapse again at 10:39 when the White House quick response team put up this three-word post: wrong, fake news. In fact, the president today threatened to hit China with an additional 50% tariff on top of the 54% importers now have to pay on Chinese goods. This would go in effect on Wednesday if China doesn't suspend retaliatory tariffs that it imposed by tomorrow. And this afternoon, with Israel's prime minister in Washington in search of relief from the new tariff, the president doubled down.
It's the only chance our country will have to reset the table. Because no other president would be willing to do what I'm doing or to even go through it. Now, I don't mind going through it because I see a beautiful picture at the end. But we are making tremendous progress with a lot of countries, and the countries that really took advantage of us are now saying, please negotiate. You know why? Because they're getting beaten badly because of what's happening. They're getting beaten badly. They're being devalued as countries. But it's the only chance we're going to have to reset the table on trade. And when we do, we're going to come out unbelievably well.
Well, judging from markets here and around the world, investors have their doubts. And today, top global banker J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon told shareholders, quote, the recent tariffs will likely increase inflation and are causing many to consider a greater probability of a recession. Just a couple of months ago, you'll recall he was downplaying the anticipated downside of tariffs and telling doubters to, quote, get over it. Last Thursday, you'll recall J.P. Morgan raised its projections for a recession this year to 60%, up from 40% before the tariffs. There's breaking news as well tonight on the marketing of all of this. CNN has learned that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, flew to Mar-a-Lago this weekend to tell the president it was imperative to get everyone on the same page and to focus their messaging more on the end game for Americans. That's according to people familiar with the conversation. The risk, he reportedly said, would be further market turmoil. Joining us now, CNN political commentator, Democratic strategist Paul Begales, and global economic analyst Rana Foroohar, a columnist and associate editor for the Financial Times, and Elizabeth Griffin, White House communications director during President Trump's first term. Rana, what do you make of the volatility today and that reaction to that one social media?
Well, it just shows you how much wishful thinking there is here. I mean, that kind of reaction is usually what you see when the rare occasion that the Fed says something amazing and the markets react. I mean, to be waiting for a president or those around him to speak in this way just shows you how incredibly anxious people are. And I honestly think there's more turmoil to come. I don't think that you're going to see China pulling back quickly. I know a lot of countries are negotiating amongst themselves right now. Maybe not only with the U.S., but together. We are in a really unprecedented situation. We haven't been here in, since the Great Depression, really, or before the Great Depression.
Alyssa, what do you think of the Treasury Secretary's visit to Mar-a-Lago?
Well, listen, they do have a messaging problem. Everyone's saying different things about the end game. Today, Peter Navarro had an op-ed out saying that there's no concessions, there's no deal to be made. This is the end game, and you have others saying we're open to negotiations. But messaging is secondary to the policy issue here. These tariffs are devastating, and every traditional economist, every Republican economist for decades would have said that this is something that would hurt wealth in this country, that would have the impact it did on the markets. And what I'm stunned by, I worked with Peter Navarro. I liked Peter Navarro. But Peter Navarro was actively kept out of key economic meetings in the Oval Office by people like Steve Mnuchin, Larry Kudlow, members of the NEC, because he often didn't have all the facts and all the details and gave half-baked ideas to President Trump. So I'm not surprised to know he is a chief architect of what was a disastrous rollout of
Do
these
you think
meetings.
anyone has the much idea? I mean, is this being driven? Much idea. I mean, is this being driven by Trump? And is he the one who? Is he the only one who will know when this ends? Or
I mean, Trump does believe in tariffs. This is something he says, one of the most beautiful words in the English language. He does truly believe that we can onshore more American jobs and have more built in America. But he now has advisors around him who are telling him this is going to work, and he doesn't have the voices who are giving him the other side of it, which he had in the first term.
Well, and it's interesting, even when he has those voices, I mean, Steve Murin at the Council of Economic Advisors actually put out a big report kind of outlining the idea that tariffs can be used as a tool to reindustrialize. But he also said in that report it's very complicated, there's a lot of balls in the air, and the president isn't even following that blueprint. So even amongst the folks that would say, you know what, we need to do this, economic nationalism is okay, tariffs are okay, they're one tool in the toolbox, he's not following that playbook. He is on some totally different page.
well, what do you think Democrats should be doing?
Blame assignment. Right? Politics is all about taking credit and giving blame. Right? And this is pretty easy. This is, right now, it's a one-man show. It's Donald Trump. This is not like the Great Depression, which were, Smoot-Hawley and all these big things were going on. It's not like '08 when whatever credit default swaps are. Like, you know what that is. It's way above my pay grade. And it's not some mysterious virus out of Wuhan. This is one guy who's taken $11 trillion away from Americans in 11 weeks. Okay, that's a lot of people's retirements. It's their college funds. He didn't have to do it. It was complete. This is economic arson. It's not a lightning strike. This is a guy setting fire to your savings. And I think the comment from Jamie Dimon is really prescient because he said more pain is coming, and he means inflation. So right now it's a stock market. Soon it's going to be a supermarket. So if you drive or dress or drink or eat, your costs are going up. And it's the one thing he got elected to do was cut the cost of living. But Democrats need to spread that now to Republicans and say, you could stop this. Congress is supposed to control tariffs. Years ago, they ceded that authority to the president. What Mr. Trump is doing is not illegal. I just think it's unwise. But Congress should claw back that power. And every Democrat would be for it. The Republicans have to own this because they could take that power back away from the president.
That would require Republicans being on board with clawing it back.
Absolutely.
That seems to be the case. Ron, what do you think is the ultimate goal for the president?
So I think there's sort of two ways to think about this. There's Donald Trump, the individual, and his psychology, and I'm not going to predict to know what that is from day to day. There is a thesis within the administration that you have to reindustrialize in part for security reasons. You need to make ships. You need to make, have critical minerals.
But all that takes a lot of time.
But it takes a lot of time. And
He's talking about all the investments that, Sam Altman talked about doing stuff here, the infrastructure, the rebuilding the grid.
Indeed. I mean, look, he's turning back the good things that happened in Trump 1. In Trump 1, I was actually a fan of Bob Lighthizer, the USTR at that point, coming out and saying, you know what? The trading relationship between China and the U.S. is fundamentally flawed. We have to reset it. Tariffs on China, very strategic. They actually didn't cause inflation. Biden then comes in, says, yeah, we're going to do that, but we're going to add some industrial policy. We're going to rebuild chips in America, which we did in 18 years, and we're now dismantling, or in 18 months, and we're now dismantling that. You have to do things at home and abroad, and you have to do them surgically, and you have to work with allies, and you have to communicate them. That's not what's happening here.
Listen, Maggie Haberman on Friday was talking about how the president seems to have given up caring about the optics of things. I mean, going off to play golf after, of course, mocking, President Obama and many others for playing golf. I mean, I think he's played golf pretty much every weekend while, there was the return of U.S. service members who died overseas and the market meltdown.
I think it's even beyond not caring about optics. I think that he doesn't feel constrained by re-election. He knows he's got 2 years to get his agenda through, and he doesn't even really care about the midterms. He doesn't care as much if other Republicans don't get elected, as long as in 2 years he can put a stamp on the Trump legacy. So that's why you're seeing him take big, bold, swift actions the way that he is. And I think he's kind of just going to let the chips fall where they may. But what I would say is I think you're absolutely spot on that in the first term there was an understanding of targeted ways that we should onshore certain industries, certain aspects. But what these are going to do are so much more sweeping. Every basic good and service, clothing, food, and things that there isn't a plan from what I've seen from the White House to deal with how we're going to meet those immediate needs, and it's just going to mean huge costs to consumers.
There's also, I think, not enough understanding that America doesn't run the global economy anymore. You know, China is a huge player. They're not just going to sit back and play Trump's game. I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing. And in some ways, this is an incredible opportunity for China to come in and reset global trade to their own liking.
Running through, I appreciate it. It was a good thing. Thank you, Paul. Coming up next one.